Long ago, when the world was new, the earth shook with the footsteps of giants. The night brought ancient tales to life.
Picture this. You've just sat down across from someone on a first date. Candlelight flickers. The menu feels way too complicated. And your brain? Completely blank. What do you say? Compliment their shoes? Ask about their job? Make a joke about the weather? Or maybe you're at a party, drink in hand, and you realize you've been standing next to a stranger for the last 3 minutes in total silence. Or worse, you're staring down the barrel of a networking event where people keep throwing business cards at you like ninja stars and asking, "So, what do you do?" And all you want to do is crawl back home and binge Netflix with a pint of ice cream. Yeah, we've all been there. Those awkward, painfully quiet moments where small talk is supposed to happen, but your brain just refuses to cooperate. Well, let me offer you something better than a cheat sheet for dating or a magic formula for networking. Instead, I've got something way more powerful: dinosaur facts. Now, hold on, don't roll your eyes. Hear me out. You might think dinosaurs are just for kids with plastic toys and Jurassic Park reruns. But here's the thing. Drop a random dinosaur fact into a conversation, and one of two things will happen. The person will think you're fascinating, quirky, and memorable, or they'll think you're weird. But in the kind of way people talk about later. Did you meet that dinosaur guy? He was actually kind of fun. Either way, you win. Because here's the truth. Everybody loves a good fact. And dinosaurs? They're the ultimate conversation starters. They're massive, mysterious, and still surprising us with new discoveries every year. In fact, by the time you watch this, paleontologists might already have unearthed a new one. That's how fast the science moves. So buckle up. What you're about to get is a survival kit of pure prehistoric knowledge. Not survival like how to wrestle a T-Rex survival, though that would make a pretty good UFC matchup, but survival in the wild jungles of human interaction. Because when you casually drop into conversation that the Tyrannosaurus had banana-sized teeth, or that the smallest dinosaur is literally smaller than your thumb, people will listen. And listen, I'm not here to give you some dusty science lecture. I'm here to entertain you. Think of this video like one giant, did you know? Machine gun. Except instead of bullets. We're firing off fun facts that are way cooler than, did you know peanuts aren't nuts? Or, did you know sloths can hold their breath longer than dolphins? Cool. But nah, dinosaurs are in a league of their own. So what's coming? Oh, just the strangest, funniest, most jaw-dropping dinosaur facts you've never heard. We're going to dive into names that are impossible to pronounce. Animals that make your SUV look like a toy car. Poop that's worth more than your house. And one poor dinosaur who got framed for a crime it didn't commit. But before we start blasting facts like meteorites, let's set the mood. Dinosaurs aren't just big lizards that went extinct a long time ago. They're the rock stars of Earth's history. These guys ruled the planet for 165 million years. Think about that. Humans? We've only been around for about 300,000. We're like the opening band that just showed up, and the headliner already left the stage millions of years ago. And the wildest part? They're still with us. Birds. Yep. That pigeon you dodged on the sidewalk. The chicken nugget you ate last week. Big Bird himself, all dinosaurs. Which means technically, we're not talking about creatures that are gone. We're talking about a dynasty that still exists. So whether you're here because you love science, you clicked by accident, or you just wanted something to play in the background while you fold laundry, stick around. I promise you'll walk away with at least one fact that makes you think, wow, I'm definitely dropping that at the next family barbecue. And if you're the type who likes to collect weird trivia just in case it saves you one day on a game show, congratulations. You've found your gold mine. Because by the time we're done, you'll know enough obscure dinosaur lore to dominate Jeopardy. Or at the very least confuse your in-laws. So let's do this. Let's dig through the dirt, brush off the bones, and unearth the kind of prehistoric facts that make you appreciate just how strange, terrifying, and downright hilarious life on Earth used to be. Welcome to the Age of Dinosaurs, as told by your friendly neighborhood fact dumper. Alright, Let's start with something that makes paleontologists sound less like scientists and more like Scrabble world champions: dinosaur names. Here's the deal. Dinosaurs have some of the weirdest, hardest to pronounce names you'll ever come across. Some of them sound like a sneeze. Others sound like the Wi-Fi password your neighbor gave you once and you still can't remember. And a few, well, they just straight up sound like someone lost a bet. Take this monster, Micropachycephalosaurus hongtuanensis. Yes, that is a real dinosaur name. It means small, thick-headed lizard of Hong Tuan, and it holds the Guinness record for longest dinosaur name ever. Try saying that 3 times fast. Actually, try saying it once correctly. You'll probably need a glass of water halfway through. Now on the flip side, we've got Ichi. That's it. 2 letters. The shortest dinosaur name officially approved. And if you're wondering, yes, there's a committee somewhere that literally decides what's allowed when it comes to naming dinosaurs. A whole group of serious scientists making sure nobody sneaks in a Mr. Chompy Rex or Fluffy Murder Bird. So, we've got a name so long it could be a Wi-Fi password, and a name so short it looks like someone's bad Scrabble move. And here's the kicker. Both of them come from China, which, by the way, is a dinosaur goldmine. See, when it comes to digging up dinos, China is right up there with the U.S. and Argentina. Those 3 countries are basically the big 3 of dinosaur discoveries. If paleontology had a World Cup, it would just be these 3 trading trophies back and forth while the rest of the world cheers politely. But what about the losers of this fossil Olympics? Believe it or not, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 11th largest country on Earth, has never officially yielded a single dinosaur fossil. 0. Nada. Which is hilarious because Congo is also famous for legends of a supposed still-living dinosaur called Mokombembe. It's basically the Congo's Loch Ness Monster. Except instead of being a fishy blob in a blurry photo, it's described as a giant sauropod hiding in the swamps. Does it exist? Well, let's just say the evidence is about as strong as your uncle's UFO story after 3 beers. But hey, that's the magic of dinosaurs. Some are real, some are legendary, and some just live in the imagination. Now, speaking of records, let's talk about size. Because if there's one thing everybody knows about dinosaurs, it's that they weren't subtle. Some of them were big enough to blot out the sun. Others were so tiny they'd fit in the palm of your hand. The heavyweight champion? That would be Argentinosaurus. Imagine an animal 118 feet long, weighing up to 80 tons. That's basically a blue whale on land. If one of these guys decided to sit down in your backyard, congratulations, you no longer have a backyard. And then there's the lightweight champion, the bee hummingbird. Yep, a living dinosaur. If we count birds, this little guy, about the size of your thumb, technically wins the award for smallest dinosaur. So, in one family reunion of dinosaurs, you'd have the massive Argentinosaurus lumbering in like a cruise ship, and then perched on its shoulder, a hummingbird that weighs less than a penny. Same family, totally different vibes. But here's something people often miss. The average dinosaur wasn't a giant. It wasn't a towering T-Rex or a skyscraper-long sauropod. Nope. Statistically, the average dinosaur weighed about 9 for 40 pounds, roughly the same as an EV Hummer. Which means, yes, dinosaurs were basically prehistoric traffic jams waiting to happen. But the median weight, the one that tells us what most dinosaurs were actually like, was closer to 389 pounds. That's about the size of an adult bison. So while movies love showing the giants, most dinos were more like big cow with an attitude. Now, if you want to really blow minds at a party, here's a record breaker for you. The most expensive dinosaur fossil ever sold. A Stegosaurus skeleton named Apex went for a staggering $44. 6 million. That's right. Someone out there paid more for a pile of 150-million-year-old bones than most of us will ever see in our lives. At the average global income, it would take nearly 600 years to save up for Apex, which is about 600 years longer than the average American mortgage feels like. And the funniest part? Despite its name, Apex was no apex predator. This thing was a plant eater with spikes on its tail. Basically, The prehistoric version of look tough. Eat salad. But clearly, looking cool pays. Because now it's the dinosaur equivalent of a Picasso. Let's not forget the weird firsts and lasts in dino history. The oldest known dinosaur? Niasosaurus from Tanzania. About 243 million years ago. Older than bees, pine trees, and even turtles. The youngest known non-avian dinosaur? Possibly a lone Triceratops horn found just 5 inches below the layer of ash from the asteroid impact. That fossil blew up the old theory that dinosaurs might have been fading away before the asteroid. Nope, they were thriving until, well, space rock said otherwise. So we've got long names, short names, record-breaking giants, and pint-sized cousins still buzzing around today. And yet, these records aren't just trivia. They remind us how wildly diverse dinosaurs were. They weren't just one type of big, scaly monster. They came in every shape, size, and personality like nature's weirdest talent show. But as crazy as these names and records are, they only scratch the surface. Because once you start looking closer, you realize half of what we think we know about dinosaurs is wrong. Some of it is Hollywood exaggeration. Some of it is old science. And some of it is just human imagination filling in the blanks. And that's exactly where we're going next. When it comes to dinosaurs, size is the thing everybody wants to talk about. Big, small, tall, short. It's like high school superlatives, but for prehistoric animals. Most likely to crush a bus. Least likely to be seen without a microscope. So let's get into it. Sauropod, the giants among us. We already mentioned Argentinosaurus, the heavyweight champion of the dino world, clocking in at over 100 feet long and weighing about 80 tons. To put that in perspective, imagine 12 African elephants duct taped together. Or if you're more of a car person, picture 15 Ford F-150 stacked end to end. That's Argentinosaurus. But here's the kicker. We think that's the biggest based on good fossil evidence. There are some candidates like Patagodoton and Bruhathcosaurus that might have been even larger, but their fossils are incomplete, which means paleontologists argue about it like sports fans arguing over who the real GOAT is, Jordan, LeBron, or Kobe. Except instead of stats and rings, they're arguing about thigh bones and vertebrae. Bird the featherweights. On the other end, you've got the bee hummingbird. Yes, the smallest living dinosaur. About 2 inches long, weighing less than a penny, and capable of flapping its wings 80 times per second. You could literally fit one on your fingertip, which is wild, because this tiny, delicate thing is more closely related to T-Rex than T-Rex was to Stegosaurus. Imagine telling your friends at trivia night, fun fact, T-Rex and hummingbirds are cousins. Watch their faces as they try to picture Jurassic Park, but instead of raptors, a swarm of angry hummingbirds attacks Jeff Goldblum. Honestly, I'd pay to see that reboot. Bar chart average versus median. Now here's a curveball. Most people think dinosaurs were all either massive or microscopic. But statistically, the average dinosaur weighed about 440 pounds, which is basically an EV Hummer. But averages are tricky, because if you've got one Argentinosaurus in the mix, it throws the numbers way off. That's why paleontologists prefer the median. And the median dino? About 389 pounds, roughly the size of a bison. So really, if you were wandering around the Mesozoic, you weren't dodging skyscraper-sized monsters at every corner. You were more likely to bump into something that looked like a giant cow with attitude issues. Hourglass not done dinosaur lifespans. What about how long they lived? Turns out, sauropods, the long-necked giants, may have lived to be 100 years old or more. That's like the prehistoric version of your great-grandma who still insists on mowing her own lawn at 97. Meanwhile, smaller dinos probably had much shorter lives. Just like today, where elephants live for decades, but hamsters are basically on fast forward. How do we know this? Dinosaur bones, like trees, have growth rings. Slice one open, not that you'd want to. And you can literally count the lines to estimate its age. It's kind of poetic, the bones themselves carrying their own calendars. Skull, the weirdest body records. Dinosaurs weren't just about size. Overall, they also hold records for the weirdest parts. Biggest eyes of any land animal ever? T-Rex. Yep. Not a sauropod. Not some giant herbivore. Rexy had eyes the size of grapefruits, giving it killer vision. So much for the Jurassic Park myth of stand still and it can't see you. Nope. It could see you. Clearly. Probably while laughing. Biggest claws? Belonged to Therizinosaurus. These were 3-foot-long scythe-like claws that made Wolverine look like a manicure model. The funny part? It was an herbivore. So imagine Freddy Krueger. But all he wants to do is garden. Shortest arms? That award goes to Carnotaurus. Everyone makes fun of T-Rex's tiny arms. But Carnotaurus had arms so ridiculously small they make Rex look like a bodybuilder. Honestly, it looked like nature forgot to finish drawing them in. And don't even get me started on T-Rex's bite force estimated at over 12,000 pounds per square inch. That's like getting hit in the face by a garbage truck. If T-Rex bit down on a car, it could probably pop it open like a soda can. Moneybag dinosaurs as luxury items. Now, let's circle back to fossils. Remember Stegosaurus apex? The $44, 6 million skeleton? That wasn't a one-off. Dinosaur bones have become the ultimate flex for billionaires. Forget yachts. Forget private islands. These guys are literally buying pet T-Rex skeletons to put in their living rooms. Which is hilarious when you think about it. Some poor Stegosaurus spends 150 million years buried under rock, only to end up as someone's status symbol next to a pool table and a flat-screen TV. Hourglass not done time warps. Here's a fact that bends the brain. We humans are closer in time to the T-Rex than the T-Rex was to Stegosaurus. That's right. The gap between T-Rex, about 66 million years ago, and Stegosaurus, 150 million years ago, is twice as long as the gap between T-Rex and us. So if you ever feel old, just remember, T-Rex would have looked at Stegosaurus the same way we look at caveman drawings. Ancient history. And it doesn't stop there. The time between Spinosaurus and T-Rex was 93 times longer than the entire existence of modern humans. Dinosaurs weren't just around for a long time. They were around for so long. They basically own the concept of time. Turtles semi-aquatic, but never fully marine. Here's a fun twist. Despite living for 165 million years and adapting into every shape possible, dinosaurs never went fully aquatic. Sure, some were semi-aquatic like Spinosaurus paddling around swamps, but no true dinosaur lived entirely in the water. Not even birds today, penguins, still come up on land. So next time someone says, dinosaurs ruled the earth and the seas, you can be the smart aleck who chimes in. Actually, mosasaurs and plesiosaurs were reptiles, but not dinosaurs. Bonus points if you do it with a smug British accent. Death and poop records. And let's not forget dinosaur poop coprolites. The biggest one ever discovered weighed 20 pounds and came from a T-Rex. It's literally a 2-decade-old Thanksgiving turkey, except it's fossilized dung. Scientists even gave it a nickname, Barnum. Because of course they did. And yes, people actually study this stuff. Why? Because inside the poop are tiny bits of bone, plants, and whatever else the Dino was munching on. It's like prehistoric forensics. CSI, Mesozoic. Performing arts personality and behavior. But maybe the weirdest part of all, some dinosaurs behaved in ways that completely break our stereotypes. Oviraptor was once thought to be a sneaky egg thief. Its name literally means egg Caesar. But later evidence showed it was probably sitting on its own eggs when it died. So instead of a villain, it was actually a tragic hero, a parent sacrificing itself to protect its kids. Hadrosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, were caught eating rotten wood. Why? Possibly to get nutrients from fungi and insects living inside, which makes them the prehistoric raccoons of the dinosaur world. Dinosaurs weren't just massive monsters stomping around. They were weird, diverse, and full of surprises. Some had giant claws they didn't use for fighting. Some had arms so small they could barely scratch their own noses. Some looked terrifying but ate nothing but plants. And yet, for all this diversity, one thing remains consistent. They were built to last. From hummingbirds to Argentinosaurus, they conquered Earth in every shape imaginable. But as impressive as their biology was, Humans have spent centuries completely misunderstanding them. Myths, mistakes, and movie magic have twisted their image into something far from the truth. And to really understand how wild these misconceptions are, we need to look at what people thought dinosaurs were versus what they actually turned out to be. That's where we're headed next. Here's the thing about dinosaurs. For as long as we've known about them, we've also been wrong about them. Like, spectacularly wrong. If dinosaurs had lawyers, they'd have sued humans centuries ago for defamation. Terrible lizards. Except they weren't lizards. Let's start with the basics. The word dinosaur literally means terrible lizard. Problem? Dinosaurs weren't lizards. Not even close. See, reptiles split into two big family trees. One branch became lizards and snakes, the Lepidosauria. The other became dinosaurs, crocodiles, and pterosaurs, archosaur. So technically, dinosaurs are closer cousins to crocodiles than they are to geckos. So next time somebody calls them giant lizards, feel free to correct them. Bonus points if you do it with the same smug tone you use when correcting someone who says espresso instead of espresso. Man-swimming dinosaurs never went fully aquatic. Another misconception, that dinosaurs ruled the seas. Nope. They dominated the land and air. Sure, but no true dinosaur ever went 100% aquatic. That means no dinosaur equivalent of whales, dolphins, or sharks, even penguins, who spend most of their lives swimming, still have to waddle onto land. The creatures you see in documentary Esmosaurs, plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, terrifying as they were, weren't dinosaurs. They were reptiles. Yes, but in a whole different category. Hollywood, of course, doesn't care. To most movie studios, anything with teeth counts as a dinosaur. Egg the Oviraptor smear campaign. Perhaps the most tragic case of bad press belongs to Oviraptor. Its name means egg thief, because when scientists first found one in the 1920s, it was sitting on a nest of eggs. They assumed it had been caught in the act of stealing breakfast. Turns out, those were probably its own eggs. Oviraptor wasn't a thief, it was a parent trying to keep its babies safe. Imagine your entire species' reputation ruined for 100 years because of a misunderstanding. That's Oviraptor. From worst mom ever to protective parent of the year. Fossils as dragon bones and giants. Now let's go back even further. Before paleontology was a science, people were digging up fossils and trying to make sense of them. And oh boy, did they get creative. In China, dinosaur bones were called dragon bones. People ground them into powders for medicine. Imagine swallowing a pill and finding out later it was made of T-Rex femur dust. In Europe, fossils were often thought to belong to biblical giants or monsters. Imagine a medieval farmer stumbling on a sauropod leg bone and saying, "Welp, that's proof Goliath was real." Even in early American history, people mistook mastodon bones for those of giant humans. George Washington himself apparently had an interest in these giant founding fathers. It wasn't until the 1800s that scientists started piecing together that these bones belonged to a whole other world of creatures. Movie camera Jurassic Park got more wrong than right. Okay, let's talk about the movie that shaped how most of us imagine dinosaurs, Jurassic Park. Don't get me wrong, it's a masterpiece. But scientifically, let's just say Hollywood took more liberties than a kid telling their parents why the cookie jar is empty. The Jurassic Park dinosaurs? Most of them were actually from the Cretaceous. Velociraptors, T-Rex, Triceratopsal Cretaceous. But Cretaceous Park doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it? The movie shrunk Dilophosaurus down to dog size and gave it a frill and venom spit, none of which is real. Actual Dilophosaurus was about 20 feet long and had 0 spit powers. And that whole T-Rex can't see you if you don't move thing? Total nonsense. T-Rex had some of the sharpest vision in the animal kingdom. Stand still. Move around. Do the macaronate didn't matter. It could see you. Clearly. Still, Jurassic Park deserves credit for one thing. It changed how the world saw dinosaurs. It made them fast. Scary. Bird-like, not just slow. Lumbering lizards. T-Rex, the case of the missing Spinosaurus. Here's one of my favorite stories. The original Spinosaurus skeleton, discovered in Egypt in 1912, was stored in a German museum. Then World War II happened. During an Allied bombing run, the museum was hit, and the fossils were destroyed. Why weren't they evacuated? Because the museum director was a die-hard Nazi who refused to save them, since the scientist who discovered Spinosaurus wasn't a Nazi supporter. So one of the most iconic dinosaurs ever was lost forever, because of spite. If that's not the most human thing ever, I don't know what is. Sauropod the Thagomizer joke that stuck. And then there's the Stegosaurus tail spikes. Today, paleontologists call them the Thagomizer. Sounds official, right? Except it comes from a 1982 Gary Larson Far Side comic strip. In the comic, a caveman teacher points to a Stegosaurus tail and says, "This end is called the Thagomizer," after the late Thag Simmons. Scientists loved the joke so much they just kept it. And now it's in textbooks, which means one of the most famous scientific terms for a dinosaur body part comes from a cartoon. Television dinosaurs in pop culture. Of course, dinosaurs aren't just science-theory pop culture icons. From toys to cereal mascots to children's shows, they've been everywhere. The Flintstones gave us dinos as household pets and construction workers. Barney the dinosaur proved that even giant reptiles could sing about friendship and get stuck in your head forever. And let's not forget Big Bird. Technically, he's a dinosaur too, which means Sesame Street has had a real-life theropod teaching the ABCs since 1969. That's the beauty of dinosaurs. They're both terrifying monsters and cuddly childhood friends. Few creatures can pull off that range. Stop sign misconceptions that still stick. Even today, people hang on to some myths. That all dinosaurs were scaly, not feathered. Wrong many had feathers. That they were all giants. Wrong many were small. That they're all extinct. Wrong again, birds are dinosaurs. Every time you order chicken nuggets, you're eating a distant cousin of Velociraptor. So the next time someone tells you dinosaurs are gone, just nod politely and then point at the nearest pigeon. Dinosaurs aren't just fossils. They're stories we've twisted, misunderstood, and sometimes gotten hilariously wrong. From dragon bones to Hollywood blockbusters, we've been projecting our own imaginations onto them for centuries. But here's the amazing part. The science is finally catching up. For the first time in history, we're not just guessing what dinosaurs looked like, sounded like, or even what color they were. We're starting to know. And the discoveries being made right now, they're rewriting everything we thought we understood. Which brings us to the next chapter. How modern science is pulling dinosaurs out of the shadows of myth and into the light of reality. For centuries, dinosaurs were like the world's greatest mystery novel. We had scattered clues, missing pages, and a whole lot of wild theories. Were they dragons? Giant lizards? Biblical monsters sent to smite humanity? Nobody really knew. But then science started catching up. Paleontology, the study of ancient life, evolved from people guessing about giant bones into an actual detective story. One with some of the coolest tools and techniques you could imagine. And today, we know more about dinosaurs than ever before. So, how do we actually know what we know? Fossils, not bones, but ghosts of bones. First, let's clear this up. Fossils aren't actual bones. If you're picturing a T-Rex skeleton as a stack of 65-million-year-old bones still intact, sorry, wrong. What we see in museums are rocks. Fossils are formed when minerals slowly replace the original bone material over millions of years. So really, you're looking at a stone cast of where the bone used to be. It's like nature's 3D printing. Except it takes longer than every season of Grey's Anatomy combined. And here's a fun field test paleontologists sometimes use to tell the difference between a fossil and a regular rock. They lick it. Seriously. Fossils are porous, meaning your tongue will stick to them a little. Rocks won't. So yes, there are actual scientists out there crouched in the dirt, licking rocks for a living. And you thought your job was weird. Evergreen tree growth rings like trees. Another discovery, dinosaur bones grow in rings, just like trees. Thin lines of growth can be counted to estimate the age of the dinosaur when it died. So when paleontologists say, this sauropod lived over 100 years, it's not just a random guess. They literally counted the rings in the bone, which, if you think about it, is pretty poetic. Dinosaurs carried calendars in their skeletons the whole time. Pile of Poo CSI, Dinosaur Poop Edition. And then there's the glamorous world of dinosaur poop. Yep, coprolites. The biggest one ever found, nicknamed Barnum, weighed 20 pounds and came from a T-Rex. Imagine carrying that home from the dog park. Paleontologists study coprolites because they're like little time capsules of diet. Inside Barnum, crushed bone fragments, calcium, phosphorus, the leftovers of whatever unlucky creature that Rex munched on. So yes, somewhere out there are PhDs who spent years studying fossilized poop, which makes family dinners real awkward when someone asks, "So, what do you do for a living?" Artist palette: dinosaurs in color. For decades, dinosaur books showed them as drab gray or swampy green. Why? Because nobody had any idea what color they were. For all we knew, T-Rex could have been bright pink with polka dots. But recently, paleontologists discovered that in some exceptional fossils, tiny structures called melanosomes, parts of cells that store pigment, are still preserved. By comparing them to modern birds, scientists can reconstruct what colors dinosaurs actually were. And the results? Mind-blowing. Sinosauropteryx had reddish-brown counter shading like a raccoon. Anchiornis had black, white, and red patterns, basically a prehistoric punk rocker. Microraptor had shiny, iridescent black feathers like a crow. Suddenly, dinosaurs weren't just gray monsters. They were vibrant, patterned, colorful animals. Imagine if Jurassic Park had shown a rainbow of feathered dinos instead of scaly green lizards. Half the audience would have thought they were watching Sesame Street, the prequel. Trumpet: the sound of dinosaurs. What about sound? Did dinosaurs roar like in the movies? Well, maybe not. The one dinosaur we're pretty confident about is Parasaurolophus. Its giant crest was basically a built-in trombone. By making a 3D computer model of the crest and blowing air through it, scientists recreated the sound. It wasn't a Hollywood roar. It was more like a deep, haunting foghorn. Imagine standing in a Cretaceous swamp and hearing that echoing across the water. Creepy. As for T-Rex, we don't have proof yet, but many scientists think it probably sounded more like a crocodile's rumbling growl than a lion's roar. So less MGM logo, more swamp monster bass drop. Globe showing Europe, Africa, dinosaurs everywhere. Another thing we've learned, dinosaurs weren't just tropical. They lived everywhere. Even Antarctica. Back then, Antarctica wasn't covered in ice. It was forested, and dinosaurs used it as a land bridge between South America and Australia. So next time you picture penguins waddling on ice, remember, their great-great-great-grandcousins once stomped around the same land in herds. And speaking of herds, some dinosaurs traveled long distances seasonally, just like today's caribou or wildebeest. These weren't just isolated monsters. They were part of ecosystems, migrating, breeding, nesting, living lives as complex as modern animals. Milky Way dinosaurs under alien skies. Here's a brainbender. During the time dinosaurs lived, Earth was on the opposite side of the Milky Way galaxy compared to today. So technically, when you look at stars, you're not even seeing the same night sky dinosaurs saw. Which means when Obi-Wan Kenobi said, "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away," he might as well have been talking about the Jurassic. Crocodile crocs versus dinos. Another fact people often misunderstand: crocodiles. Everyone says crocs are living fossils that survived alongside dinosaurs, which is kind of true, but not exactly. The crocodiles we see today didn't evolve until about 46 million years ago, long after the non-avian dinosaurs died out. Their ancestors, sure, coexisted with dinosaurs, but modern crocodiles missed the party. So next time someone says, crocodiles lived with T-Rex, you can be that person who interrupts with, actually, just prepare for eye rolls. Cup with straw, drinking the same water. Here's one of my favorite little facts. Because of the water cycle, every glass of water you drink today has almost certainly passed through a dinosaur at some point. That's right, somewhere in the past. A thirsty triceratops slurped the same molecules now floating in your iced latte. So congratulations, you've shared a beverage with dinosaurs. Starbucks, 65 million years in the making. Detective less than 1% discovered. And maybe the most exciting part? Paleontologists estimate that less than 1% of all dinosaurs that ever lived are represented in the fossil record, meaning we've barely scratched the surface. There are entire species we'll never know. Entire ecosystems lost to time. But every new dig has the chance to change everything we think we know. Imagine writing history with 99% of the pages missing. That's paleontology. Dinosaurs aren't just bones in museums anymore. Thanks to science, we can now picture their colors, hear their sounds, and even guess at their behaviors. They've gone from myths and dragon bones to living, breathing creatures in our imagination backed by evidence. And yet, for all we've learned, there's still one last thing dinosaurs teach us. It's not about how they lived, but about how they ruled. For 165 million years, they were the kings and queens of Earth, and their reign makes our own time here look like a blink of an eye. Which brings us to the final chapter, the legacy dinosaurs left behind, and what they can teach us about our own fragile place on this planet. After everything we've uncovered, the names that twist your tongue, the giants that shook the earth, the myths that fooled us, and the science that's finally peeling back the truth, one question remains. What do dinosaurs mean to us? Because if you strip away the teeth, the bones, and the flashy museum skeletons, dinosaurs aren't just about the past. They're about perspective. They force us to look at time differently. They remind us how short our own chapter really is. Dinosaurs never really died. First, let's remember, not all dinosaurs are gone. Every single bird you've ever seen is, biologically, a dinosaur. That sparrow hopping across the sidewalk. Dinosaur. That turkey your uncle deep-fried on Thanksgiving. Dinosaur. Big bird on Sesame Street. Yep, dinosaur. It's not just a fun fact, it's profound. Dinosaurs didn't entirely lose to the asteroid. Some adapted, shrank down, sprouted feathers, and survived. And today, they're everywhere. They fill the skies. They sing in the morning. They eat French fries in parking lots. So in a way, dinosaurs never really left. They just traded thunderous footsteps for wings. The kings of time. But what about the ones that didn't make it? Think about this. Dinosaurs ruled Earth for 165 million years. That's nearly 3 times as long as mammals have been in charge. Humans? We've been around for about 300,000 years. That's nothing. That's less than a single percent of dinosaur time. To put it in perspective, if the reign of dinosaurs was a football game, we haven't even finished the national anthem yet. They measured their existence in millions of years. We measure ours in centuries. It's humbling, almost a little unsettling, but it's also kind of freeing, because it shows just how vast the story of life really is and how small our part of it might be. Skull extinction as a reminder. Dinosaurs also carry a lesson in fragility. They were everywhere. They filled every niche. They were successful beyond anything we can imagine. And yet, all it took was one rock from space to end it all. It's easy to think we're invincible, with our skyscrapers and smartphones and nuclear weapons. But one asteroid, one climate shift, one event out of our control and poof, history moves on without us. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to ground you. Because if even the titans of Earth could fall, then our survival depends not on dominance, but on adaptability, on learning from the past. T-Rex and the billions. Take T-Rex, the king of dinosaurs. Studies suggest there were about 20,000 alive at any given time in North America, over the entire lifespan of the species. About 2.5 billion T-Rex lived and died. 2.5 billion kings. And now, all that's left are a handful of fossils in our imaginations. It's a reminder that no matter how powerful, no matter how terrifying, everything is temporary. Even the king. Dinosaurs everywhere. And yet, their legacy is written into every corner of Earth. Fossils in deserts. Footprints in stone. Birds in the sky. They may not roam in herds anymore, but their presence is stitched into the very fabric of life. When you stand in a museum and look up at a skeleton towering above you, you're not just looking at bones. You're looking at proof that life adapts, thrives, and survives in ways more spectacular than we can imagine. What dinosaurs teach us about ourselves. Here's the real takeaway. Dinosaurs are not just about what was. They're about what is and what could be. They teach us that success doesn't guarantee survival. They remind us that adaptability is everything. They show us that life is stranger, more colorful, and more surprising than we ever give it credit for. And maybe most importantly, they remind us to stay humble. Because if the Earth could roll over and erase 165 million years of dominance in a single day, then our story, our buildings, our politics, our little dramas are just a blink in the cosmic timeline. So the next time you're at a party, or stuck in an awkward silence, or just trying to come up with something interesting to say, remember the dinosaurs. Tell someone that T-Rex had eyes the size of grapefruits, or that the smallest dinosaur alive today weighs less than a penny, or that we're closer in time to T-Rex than T-Rex was to Stegosaurus. You'll get a laugh, or a wait, what, or maybe even a thoughtful pause. And in that moment, you'll have done exactly what dinosaurs do best, spark wonder. Because at the end of the day, dinosaurs aren't just fossils in stone. They're conversation starters, imagination fuel, and the ultimate reminder that life is big, messy, beautiful, and fragile. And maybe that's the greatest legacy of all. So here's to the dinosaurs, the ones who ruled, the ones who fell, and the ones still flapping around our skies today. May we learn from them, laugh at their weirdness, and carry their story forward. Because if a hummingbird is a dinosaur, then maybe, just maybe, we're still living in the age of dinosaurs. And that, my friends, is a fact worth sharing.